Welcome to Jim Podcasts. This is our second episode. As usual, sit back and relax. This will be a casual, yet lecture-style introduction to some topics from Greek philosophy. Last episode, we covered the basics of Plato and Aristotle, and today we will be covering Stoicism. Beginning in around 300 BC is the earliest recording of the tenets of Stoicism, which many people think is just a set of ethics, but it actually contains quite a lot of theology and deep philosophy, just as Platonic philosophy is primarily theological as well. We'll look at Stoicism. Most people say it's just a collection of logical propositions, ethics, and some basic metaphysics. The core pillars are conquest of self and life in accordance with nature, as well as the brotherhood of man. Some interesting bullet points about Stoicism would be the pantheistic materialism that it purports to believe in. This may sound a little contradictory, as most people who talk about pantheism have a very high set of ontology or metaphysics, and they believe in spirituality, souls, energies, and other realms. But yet here, we see pantheism and materialism at the same time. We'll continue to talk about how that can be. They rejected Platonic distinction between the transcendental world and the ordinary world. So there is no other realm or transcendental to the Stoic. To the Stoic, there is just the ordinary world, and that was the primary focus of this philosophy. Whatever exists must be body. That is another core teaching. So everything that exists must be body, or have body, or be in the form of body. But there is no existing outside of this form of body, and there is no transcendental world. The universe itself, obviously, is material in this philosophy, and the distinction between passive and active principle is one of, again, the core tenets. So you have the crude, unformed matter without quality. Then you have the dynamic reason, or plan, which forms and organizes it. So the crude, unformed matter, which has no quality, and the dynamic reason, also called the plan, which forms it and organizes it. Dynamic reason is spirit, or fiery vapor, where cruder, passive matter emerged from and would eventually be absorbed into. So again, we have the dynamic reason, or the plan, which forms and organizes this crude, unformed matter. And this dynamic reason is a spirit, or a fiery vapor, where the cruder, passive matter is coming from and where it's reabsorbed into. So even though they rejected these transcendental metaphysics of Plato, and they reject some of the teaching of Aristotle, they actually sound a little bit like Plotinus with this emerging from and then coming back to. You'll see that a lot in Greek philosophy with Middle Platonism and Neoplatonism. You come from somewhere, you go somewhere else temporarily, then you have to go back. It's all about that return. It's all about going back to that floating upper realm, to go back to that great mover, or that uncaused one that you came from. This is distinct from the Bible, which says that you are created ex nihilo. You were created out of nothing. Your soul was created out of nothing. It wasn't created out of some other substance that's eternal. Nothing in you is eternal. There is no eternality in humankind. The eternality, or the everlastingness, comes afterward, but you are created at one set point. Nothing in you existed before that. The only mention in the Bible of anything even remotely similar, which the rabbinic Jews take way out of proportion, is in Ecclesiastes, where it says that we all come from the Lord, and to him we shall return. And this is usually infused with some kind of Greco-philosophy to say, oh, see, we used to be inside God, now we're out. We're going to go back to God. That's not at all what it's saying, because taken without Greek context, all it says is, from the Lord we are, then we have to return. This is mainly talking about energy. Energy. It's not talking about you were conscious with God. The energy that God used to create you is what's going to return to him at your death. That's it. The energy belongs to God. Life itself is breathed into you. But you yourself, your consciousness, your being, what makes you different and distinct from other human beings and from the energy of life, called the nefesh in the Hebrew, the existence, the vivacity of life, the distinction between you and that is what's important in the Bible. You aren't the life. The life's given to you, but you aren't the life. The life can be taken away from you. That's all that it means. God gives the life, God can take away the life and bring it back to him. It has nothing to do with you have a conscious, eternal mind that was always there and we're all made out of this reincarnated being that's just kind of one consciousness in the universe. We don't believe in anything like that. So the Greek philosophers who do talk about those kind of ideas, like Plotinus, were unfortunately very wrong. The spirit in the Stoic philosophy is actually still material. So there is not a spirit with some kind of transcendental flavor. It's all material. Two bodies, they were not afraid to say, can actually occupy the same space. Some of you may have seen that joke that I gave on Twitter the other day. Anyway, the active principle, or logos, permeates reality as mind, and it pervades the body. Described as God, nature, or providence, that's what this logos is called in the Stoic scheme. It is the soul of the universe. So Stoicism is also monism. God/logos, finer matter, immanent of the material universe. So still immanent of the material universe, made up of some kind of a finer matter that we are not, but still some kind of a matter. See this lack of transcendentals where they're not saying God is beyond being or beyond time or beyond space or beyond existence? There's no language like that in the Stoic mindset. God/logos is finer matter, immanent of the material universe. On the topic of particulars, particulars are supposed to be the microcosms of the whole. There's an unbroken unity, and it contains an active and, as we said before, a passive principle. So remember the distinction between the active and the passive principle. You have the crude, unformed matter without quality and the dynamic reason which forms and organizes it. And we see the particular or microcosms of the whole have this active and passive principle that we mentioned earlier. So this is just going over an overview. I'm not going to get lost into each minor subject within this, or we could be here for hours. The active organizer is the logos of the particular when we're talking about particulars. The seminal logi are seeds, through the activity of which individual things come into existence as the world develops. Let's repeat that. They are seeds, through the activity of which individual things come into existence as the world develops. And these seminals are contained within universal logos, particles of the divine fire which permeates reality. So the permeating reality is that pantheism bit that I spoke about earlier. And how is it materialism and not transcendental pantheism? Because a divine fire which permeates reality. So this is still a physical thing. Fire. Fire is something you can actually touch. It's not transcendental. So the fire is permeating all of reality. And the seminal are contained within the universal logos. And these universal logos, particles of the divine fire, which permeates reality. So we have active and passive principle. And again, these seminals or seeds, through the activity of which individual things come into existence as the world develops. The active organizer is the logos of the particular. This may be a little confusing because we're talking about so many different topics at once. This is a brief overview of what the Stoics believed on metaphysics. To break it down again, we have materialism, lack of transcendentals. We have active and passive principle. And then within particulars themselves, again, we have active and passive principle. Onto man's soul. Man's soul is a portion or emanation from the divine fire/logos. See that? So man's soul is a portion or emanation from the divine fire/logos, according to the Stoic belief. So they believe that they actually emanate from this divine fire. So everything's part of this divine fire. That's their materialistic pantheism once again. Again, not really talked about in the Bible. You're not a part of God. You are not an emanation of God. Not from the biblical theology whatsoever. Spirit or warm breath pervading the body, giving it form, character, and organization. That's what the soul is. So it's some kind of a warm breath. That part's a little similar to the Bible that says the nefesh is the breath of life. It's kind of this animating principle. So that part we wouldn't necessarily say is total garbage. But the idea that your emanations from the divine fire, the pantheistic material divine fire, that would be wrong according to the biblical religion. Soul is material itself. So see, soul is material. It's not some transcendental thing. Survives the body, but it's not eternal or mortal. Oh, so this is different from Platonic philosophy and from Pythagoras in the 6th century BC, the first one to coin the eternal soul. But here the soul is material. the Stoics believed, and it would actually be destroyed during the world conflagration. The world conflagration would destroy the soul. Souls are kind of tripartite. They consist of the five senses: speech/self-expression, reproductive capacity, and the ruling element, or reason. So 5 senses, self-expression, reproductive, and ruling element. That's what a soul is made out of. And souls are not eternal. They will be destroyed in the conflagration. But unfortunately, they believe in this emanation stuff, which we don't believe. The soul is called the logos of man, according to the Stoics. The immanent logos is the reason/present. The expressed logos is reason made known to man by speech or expression. So the immanent logos is kind of an unnoticed logos, an unnoticed kind of wisdom or action, kind of passive. And then you have the expressed logos, which is the reason made known to man by speech/expression. Now we'll get into how Platonism and Stoicism, in 1 to 200 AD began to kind of melt and merge, and whether they had a conflict with one another or how they maybe shared some ideas. Let's get into that. Here are my notes. Platonism and Stoicism, 1 to 200 AD, they deviated from the original classical teaching. So both Platonism and Stoicism were now moving away by this time. It had been multiple centuries. They borrowed from each other, and many people were Platonized Stoics or Stoicized Platonists. So you would have kind of a Platonic Stoic. So a Stoic who maybe believed in these eternal indestructible souls and maybe believed in the forms and the theory of knowledge of Plato. Or you'd have kind of a Stoicized Platonist who was very theological, but maybe a little more materialistic in their pantheism, according to Stoicism. Some figures in this semi-transitional time period would be Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. They were the Stoics who focused on conduct itself. So Seneca was from 4 to 65 AD, Marcus Aurelius from 121 to 180. We look at Seneca and others, they kind of deviated from, like I said, the classical Stoicism. Seneca stresses the divine perfection, goodness so much that he approximates conception of God as transcendent. So see, now Seneca is combining transcendentals with Stoicism, even though Stoicism says, no, we don't believe in a transcendental realm. We believe only in the physical, orderly world and the divine material fire which pervades everything, of which our souls, which again are material, are emanations of. But here he's bringing in transcendentals from Platonism. Marcus Aurelius says human nature is comprised of body, animal soul, intelligence. The first two are derived from the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, and the ruling part is an offshoot from God, not made of matter. So that was a quick overview of Stoicism to discuss with, and just kind of go back. We have the active and the passive principle rule in Stoicism, lack of transcendentalism, lack of the eternal soul. The soul is created and will be destroyed during some sort of a conflagration, which is really not mentioned in any of the earlier philosophies, at least during this time period. And we have an interesting concept of the logos start to appear in Stoicism as well, and how we see this kind of logos of man overtake as the faculty of reasoning. So this was a short episode, episode 2, Stoicism and Stoicism with Platonism, titled In Progress. And the next time we're going to cover Middle Platonism and then get into Neoplatonism. So that'll be some very interesting topics that we'll have to deal with. And then after I have finished introducing these philosophies, I will talk about how they've been used in the church, when they've been used too much or incorrectly, and then when they've been used in a limited capacity, which has yielded a more loyal and more fruitful comparison to Scripture. So thank you all very much for listening to this Gene podcast, and I hope everybody enjoyed.